guns, and every veteran knows a guy like that. Everybody knows a dude like that will absolutely be like, yeah, Walz is not even a real veteran. It's like, no actual veteran, and there's a ton of them in America, you know, because the poverty draft and all.
This weapon that you carried into, given that you abandoned your unit right before they went to Iraq, do not pretend to be something that you're not.
Walz served in the Army National Guard for 24 years and has never claimed to have seen active combat. The Harris campaign not addressing Walz's comments that he carried a gun and saying only that he carried and trained others to use weapons of innumerable times. Adding that Walz would never insult or undermine any American service to this country. In fact, he thanked Senator Vance for putting his life on the line for our country. Walz ignoring Vance's attacks on the trail, instead firing up the crowd.
I haven't slept in 24 hours. You know why? We'll sleep when we're dead. We'll sleep when we're dead.
Harris and Walz are canceling their planned stops to North Carolina and Georgia today because of the storms. But later this week, they head to Arizona and Nevada. Harris and Walz are hoping to ride this new jolt of enthusiasm.
Also, what are we talking about? Like, oh, wow, I can't believe Tim Walz was with 24 years of service. Like, he was an anti-Iraq veteran, okay? He didn't go into the Iraq war, but he literally was like, he came into Congress on an anti-ticket after serving the Defense Department for 24 years. I don't know if you know this, J.D. Vance, but Donald Trump dodged the Vietnam draft, which, by the way, I objectively have said time and time again was a very smart thing for him to do, okay? Like, what an insane turn of events here.
All the way until the election. All
right, Selena Wang, thank you.
Like, this draft dodger, bro. I did a small thread on Vance versus Walz on Military Record.
That I saw a fought in Iraq. I served in a combat zone. I never said that I saw myself.
I mean, it's true. It's true. He was I don't have a ton of military knowledge, but it seems to me that if you reach corporal rank after 4 years of service and admit you were never in an actual, probably shouldn't talk on the dude who reached command sergeant major rank after 24 years of service. Yeah. Like, the guy who he's doing stolen valor to, which I always love because hogs love doing that stuff, was the highest ranked congressperson at the time. Veteran laying out walls and the steps that would have happened when he retired. Let's do this. I happened to be in the National Guard in 2005 in Iraq for the first few months of that year. In 2004-2005, the NG had a policy that if soldiers were eligible and selected for promotion, they were promoted conditionally with the requirement that they complete their non-commissioned officer education requirements within a certain period of time. I do not recall if there were different stipulations for command sergeant major positions, as they are selected by a council and not straight order of the merit list. Okay, blah, blah, blah. This is boring. I don't really care, man. Do the vets in the chat even care about this? Like, it's just, who gives a dude? The dude served for 24 years, like, and he was literally correct on his campaigning way back then. Okay, he literally ran against the Iraq War. He ran against the Iraq War. That was sound politics and great policy at the time. Okay, as a 24-year, as a dude who served in the military for 24 years, he turned around and he said, we shouldn't do this Iraq. He ran on that. Okay, he ran on that. Donald Trump also was a draft dodger for the Vietnam War and literally ran against the Iraq as well. So why are you saying, like, what's the argument here? Oh, dude, you should have been in Iraq. Like, you should have done this that we think was stupid and many Americans for no reason. That makes no sense, dumbass. You make no sense. You're stupid. We are in 2024. I like this take on it personally.
And traitor for retiring from military before Iraq, says the guardsman who replaced him. Tim Walz, accused by National
I'll let this dude without the teeth do the talking for me.
Guard peers of betraying his country. As a veteran of the Iraqi campaign, I would like to respond to this. If you don't know where the accusations are coming from, they're coming from this. Command Sergeants Major retired Thomas Behrens and Paul Herr wrote an open letter that they posted on Facebook. Basically what they said was, Tim Walz was the command sergeant major of his battalion, and in 2005, when the unit received a order that they were going to be deploying to Iraq, that Tim Walz abruptly retired from the National Guard and ran for Congress. They are saying he abandoned his soldiers when they needed him the most and skipped out on a deployment. And Thomas Barron is the guy who replaced Tim Walz as the command sergeant major of that battalion. This Thomas Barron's, who in March of 2020 posted this on his Facebook: "Hurry before they are sold out. One of the best replacements for toilet paper out there." If you'll remember, in March of 2020, there was a toilet paper shortage. And what is he suggesting that you wipe your ass with? Socks that have the logo of the Democratic Party on it. What about this post from December of 2019? If you're having a bad day, just remember there's a Mr. Pelosi. Or what about this post from January where he's taking shots at Joe Biden? That's the Thomas Barron's that wrote the open letter. Thomas Barron's, who is very clearly MAGA, who very clearly has political motivations in his interpretation of Tim Walz's exit from the National Guard. My interpretation as a soldier and veteran myself is this: he was a command sergeant major. If he was just trying to dodge a deployment, he didn't need to retire, leave, or do anything sneaky to do it. He had the position and power to do it. And according to people who served under him, they said the following: he talked with us for quite a while on that subject. He weighed the decision to run for Congress very heavy. He loved the military. He loved the Guard. He loved
Poop socked?
the soldiers that he worked with. You can't just run for Congress. The stars have to be aligned. A seat has to be vacating in the party that you want to run for. Has to be the right year. You have to be in a position to campaign, raise money, etc., etc. So it's very clear what happened here. Tim Walz was considering a congressional run for a while, as that guy said. In 2005, the stars were aligned, and it just so happened that his unit got tagged for an upcoming deployment. So he was at a crossroads that he weighed heavily and made a hard decision. That decision led to a political career that took him to the governor of Minnesota, where he did a lot of amazing things that he can be proud of. And through his work, we can see his character. And a guy with his character is not the guy that Thomas Barron's and Paul Hurt is accusing him of being, especially when Thomas Barron's has clear political intention. And
For the record, this is like what the average person will think about this, especially in terms of like veterans. Obviously, like, I think a lot of veterans have a lot of reverence, no matter how stupid they are, because, you know, veterans are like every other category. There's a ton of incredibly reactionary, and then there are a ton of veterans who are, especially combat veterans, who are unimaginably anti, right? Many of them are in this community, okay? But most veterans will respect the dude like Walz, who served in the military for 24 years and then went into Congress and was literally, okay, was literally in charge of Veterans Affairs and actually passed bills specifically for all vets. Like, you cannot on a guy on that front. This will only appeal to the grunt force who LARP like they served, okay? Who never served but wear all the merch, you know, get all the tactical stuff on their guns, and every veteran knows a guy like that. Everybody knows a dude like that will absolutely be like, yeah, Walz not even a real veteran. How? It's like, no actual veteran, and there's a ton of them in America, you know, because the poverty draft and all, will ever be this disrespectful on Maine. The dude who actually served and then served the veteran community as well when he was in Congress. It's ridiculous. Completely ridiculous.
oh, by the way, Command Sergeant Major retired Barron's. While you're busy insulting a guy who served 24 years in the armed forces, what about the guy you're voting for that dodged the draft through made-up injuries? Who called a POW a loser and said he likes his heroes not captured? A guy who called dead soldiers losers and suckers? A guy who has so little respect for the flag that he'll hug it just to pander? You call this respect for the flag? So if you want to vote for a draft-dodging, pandering loser.
The most they shade is being National Guard, but he retired and then did tons of it for the veteran community. Exactly. Also, as I've told you guys this before, when you're doing artillery drills, you still up your brain, okay? You up your body in basic. Like, this is something that I keep explaining to people over and over again. You don't have to go and like sit in an operating base in the Karengal Valley for you to get like absolutely destroyed, okay? That's why his original run, where he had that campaign ad about his ears and how he like lost his hearing and only got healthcare, and how important healthcare was for him for that reason, when he like was finally able to hear again and he heard his daughter cry or sing in the morning for the first time. Like, That's not only a beautiful story, that's not only a beautiful story that like literally packages up in an emotional way an incredibly important commitment to healthcare as a politician. That's also a very common story. Okay, I know I on like the grunt force vets on a regular basis. I know I on like a lot of the dumb reactionary veterans on a regular basis. But like these are still very real things that I talk about all the time. That's why I have a massive community of vets as well in here, ironically enough.
Who insults POWs and dead soldiers and then attack a guy who actually served and wore the uniform? Do you, bro? But don't expect real buyer. And to Master Sergeant Retired Tim Walz, thank you for your service, and I will be voting for you as my next vice president.
Walz is good on the veteran front. People, especially other vets, shitting on him for getting out after 24 years or suffering from brain disease. I did 6. People who decide to stay in usually do 20 and get out. 30 is generally the HYT, high year tenure for enlisted. And this isn't even talking about the support he had for the vets after his time in. Exactly. That's why I was saying, like, this argument is so stupid. It won't work. It literally will not work. Like, calling into question this person's, like, service, like, maybe it will work for John Kerry as it did back then, but I don't think right now it's going to work when the other guy is Donald Trump. And also, the argument that they're having is over him not going into active combat in Iraq when, like, 90% of the American public is completely, this was, it should not have been fought anyway, including, but not limited to, Donald Trump, who ran against the Iraq and defeated Hillary Clinton by consistently claiming that Hillary Clinton was a hawk, who championed the Iraq war. Please, dude. It obviously didn't work for John Kerry. No, it did work as a knock against John Kerry. What are we talking about? John Kerry did not win. But that was a different time because that was George W. Bush. That was in the heat of the it absolutely worked against John Kerry. But we're not living in the John Kerry era, okay? We're living in an era, it was post 9/11 smoke in general, okay? It won't, that kind of attack is not going to work against Walz the way that it did for Kerry, because we are far removed from 9/11, okay? As a matter of fact, the only thing that we remember about 9/11 is the atrocities that we committed in the aftermath of 9/11, and even from a selfish perspective, 12,000 plus American men and children that in service of a war that nobody should have fought. That's why I'm saying this is a really, really, really dumb way to argue, and it once again spells chaos for the Trump ticket. They're just oblivious, and they're just throwing at a wall to see what sticks. Stupidest argument. My mom did 22 years in the NGE before retiring during the Iraq war to take care of her newborn daughter. She a piece of shit. 2 righties, forearms. Yeah, there's also a lot of stories like that too. But it's especially dumb because like virtually every American understands that the Iraq war was bad. So like if your argument is, oh, you're fake because you didn't go and fight in Iraq, you're an idiot. You're supposed to be saying the Iraq war was bad. Meanwhile, on the undocumented immigration and mass deportation conversation, the Democrats should probably, if they want to talk about immigration at all, should probably get the Republicans to explain how they're going to do this exactly.
Going to start the largest mass deportation in the history of our country because
it's just that they're too afraid. They're too afraid. They see the 60% approval rating for mass deportation, not recognizing that that comes from the consequence of this being an untested narrative, right? Uncontested narrative. That's the reason why it has 60% approval. So that will cause them to not actually contest it. And if they don't contest it and they don't actually walk people through the steps, then yeah, that approval rating will even go higher for this unimaginably Hitlerian policy. You cannot have a guy running in our duopoly going, we are going to do Hitler, okay? We're going to do stuff that Hitler would look at and go, damn, that's right, that's good. 20 million people? That's insane.
We are going to start the largest mass deportation in the history of our country because we have no choice. It's not sustainable. And we are going to start with violent criminals, and we're going to start then with criminals. And our local police is going to work with us because they know everything about the people. They know their names. They know everything about them. They know their middle name. They know their numbers. We are going to start
Jesse Waters bitching about stolen valor.
People take that very seriously. And for him to say that, you know what, I made the decision to not go on this deployment, you know, before I knew I was going to be deployed. Remember back after 9/11, Judge?
Dog, you literally are a liberal arts major. Like, shut the fuck up. You didn't do anything.
We were talking about in 2002. The midterms were about going to Iraq.
Right.
2003, we were in Iraq. This is 2005. If you are a reservist, you know you're going at that point.
Right.
And to say, oh, I didn't know in the timeline, he is a liar. And people take this very seriously.
No, his unit was not deployed. What the f do you mean? And he was running for Congress.
The truth is that Walz says he earned the rank of Command Sergeant Major, which is the highest enlisted rank, Greg. But he served as Command Sergeant Major, but he didn't stay in that role long enough to keep that title when he retired. So he lied about that. I mean, that is an out-and-out lie. And it matters to a lot of people.
Yeah, it does. You know, a lot of people may be ambivalent about this because they're not in the military. But it cares to the people who are in the military. They do care about this. So you have to respect that opinion. I like that he said he would ban the very weapons that he carried in, which means no weapons. So I can go and get a tank. But
dude, honestly, also the other side of this is that I don't care about this. I don't think people that do care about this in the veteran community care about it in the way that these guys are explaining it, but I also don't give a shit at all.
To add, I'm a civilian, and then they go on their way. But the reason why it's
like I can't begin to
people in the military care.
I can't begin to explain to you how little I care. Oh, dude. Oh my God.
Military. It's not like Jesse's going around Midtown telling everybody he's in, you know, the Navy SEALs, at least anymore. But it would be like if you don't. Let me put it this way: if you think it doesn't matter, imagine somebody claiming to take credit for your work. And you go to a bar to meet your other friends at happy hour, and you go, you wouldn't believe this. This guy, Jesse, steals my work all the time. And then your friends go, oh, that's no big deal, dude. It's just what... They don't care because it's not their work. So you have to understand that the stolen valor is particularly important to the people that are in that world. So as small as these items might be, they're not small to the people in that world.
Right. And in that world, you know, for you to say the weapons that I carried, I mean, the guy went to Italy. That was not a combat zone, Harold. I mean, how does this guy, he's a governor, he was a congressperson, how does this guy who accepted the running for VP not think this kind of stuff is going to come up?
Well, he ran for Congress a few times, and I think this came up. And when he ran for governor, this came up. And voters, whatever happened, voters reconciled themselves with it. Now, I don't disagree with the main point here. He needs to clean this up, explain it. I don't think it was anything nefarious. That's just my thought on it. I think both Senator Vance and Governor Walz are the only two veterans on the ticket. This time they both should be recognized and celebrate and give gratitude for what they did for our country. But I hope he cleans this up and fully explains it.
You know, the difference between Vance and Walz is that Vance was actually in Iraq. The Vance took it to Iraq. This guy was too scared to take it to Iraq.
I wouldn't go there.
Well, I would, and the men in his battalion would also.
I know, the difference is Vance didn't lie. It doesn't. The service doesn't matter. Even though
no. Yeah, he had to go to Iraq.
In certain situations, I mean, Congress and America takes this very seriously.
Okay, as an American, if you understand the sacrifice of the military and what people were voluntarily signing up to go do in Iraq and Afghanistan in 2005, 2006, after 9/11, this should enrage you. You should be demanding answers, and there should be a thorough explanation. He did run for Congress on this, and he continued to lie about the theaters of what he said that he served in. Inside Walz's unit, which he did not deploy to Iraq with, J.R. Salzman, who was in the unit, lost his arm. There are big sacrifices that were made.
Dude, this is opening up perhaps one of the best slam dunks of all time. Walz's background in the Senate, or Walz's background in Congress, in the House, is filled to the brim with insane goodies for the vets. His job was literally to deal with vets. Okay? Like, it is such this. I cannot comprehend how these guys are running this line without even doing a quick Google search. Like, he literally He literally left service after 24 years, ran for Congress, and was in charge of veterans in Congress, where he passed a ton of bipartisan bills for veterans in Congress. It's so funny. Like here, Walz's U.S. House tenure, bipartisan bills, and a focus on vets and farms. Okay. This is also part of the reason why I think he's such a good VP, because the VP controls Congress, right? Kamala Harris, not exactly great at doing that, but Joe Biden used to do that for Obama and did a very job at it, where he would literally give the Senate anything they wanted. He would give the Republicans. He sidestepped Obama multiple times. He sidestepped the Democratic Party's congressional leaders multiple times to give Republicans what they wanted, even when they had even when the Republicans were bargaining from a much worse position overall. Walz was elected in 2006 to represent Minnesota's 1st congressional district, was particularly active on issues before House Agriculture and Veterans Affairs committees. Okay. He also sat on the Armed Services and Transportation and Infrastructure committees. During his dozen years in the Capitol Hill, Walz developed a reputation for working across the aisle while supporting his party's priorities on healthcare and the Iraq War. Walz, who served in a rural swing district, was rated as one of the more bipartisan and effective members of the House during his last term in the chamber. Walz was ranked as the 88th most bipartisan out of the 436 members who served. He earned an even higher score from the Center for Effective Lawmaking, a partnership between the University of Virginia and Vanderbilt, rated Walz as among the 203 Democrats in the House in his last term. Here are Iraq concerns and ACA support. Walz joined Congress halfway through the President George W. Bush's second term, when there was divided control of the government and significant frustration about the war in Iraq. He ran on an anti-Iraq ticket. During Democrats' weekly radio address in January 2007, Walz said that it was the highest rank. During Democrats' weekly radio address in January 2007, Walz said that as the highest-ranking enlisted soldier to ever serve in Congress and a veteran who served in support of Operation Enduring Freedom, he shared many voters' concerns about the war. Okay? Our military men and women know that it is their duty to their mission without question, but so too is our duty to question the mission on their behalf. Okay? He was an anti-Iraq veteran for 24 years in 2007. Okay? We are in 2024 when there's like 8 people left that believe the Iraq was justified. The dudes who were the architect of the Iraq openly admit that it was not justified. They actually actively run away from the position. They never want to talk about it. Okay? But back then, not exactly the most popular position. Requires bravery. Walz said the United States needed diplomatic and political solutions in Iraq, not more American troops. Okay? One of the more difficult tasks in years ahead was brokering an agreement with the party on what would become the ACA or Obamacare. But here's some of the VA stuff, okay? He bucked his party on gun stuff. Obviously, that makes sense. He's a gun guy. But the VA wait list, and he's done a lot more on gun control since then, okay? Just 2 years later in 2014, Walz found himself working across the aisle as one of the lawmakers looking into the Department of VA lengthy wait list as a member of the Veterans Affairs Committee. During a hearing with VA whistleblowers in July, Walz criticized the department for having a goal but no strategy to address its shortcomings. I would submit to all of us here, the watchdog on this and the outside agency to look at this here. It's us. We're given the constitutional right to do it. When I go home, I'm asked about this and I should be held accountable. He co-sponsored several bipartisan bills addressing the structure of the VA in the months that followed and voted to approve legislation overhauling aspects of VA healthcare after being named to the conference committee that negotiated a final version of this bill. Make no mistake, he said, the bill isn't perfect. It will not solve all of VA's problems, but it does allow us to take a step in reforming the VA to provide veterans and their families real solutions. Walz said in a statement. He would go on to see the top Democratic seat on the VA committee a few years later, eventually securing the title of ranking member during his last term in Congress. Tennessee Republican Representative Phil Rowe, who was on him the other day, I think I saw him on Twitter, or another one of these Republican dipshits was on him on Twitter, actively used to post photos with him, talking about how much he loves him, okay? Talking about how much he enjoys their time together. It might have been an Emmer. Oh, that was Tom Emmer, my bad. Okay, well, Phil Rowe, who was the chairman of the panel at the time, released a written statement that he was thrilled to hear that my good friend and fellow veteran was selected by the Democrats as their top member on the committee. Walz has been a tireless advocate for veterans. I know he will continue that fight as a ranking member. I look forward to working alongside Rep. Walz as we strive on both sides of the aisle to improve the lives of our nation's heroes. The rest of the stuff is like on farming bills. But overall, he was primarily concerned with vets. He was primarily concerned with healthcare. He was primarily concerned with veterans. He was also, you're correct again, Kamala is blessed. Yeah. So the idea that this guy's like service should be called into question for, one, opposing the Iraq at a time when it was not very popular, but now we celebrate those who actually actively were against the Iraq, okay, is ridiculous. In 2024, it's especially ridiculous, especially when you're running with a president who has also benefited from not being in politics when the Iraq war was happening and literally chirped at Hillary Clinton for being supportive of the Iraq while he claimed he was a peaceful dove who was anti-Iraq. What are we doing? What are the Republicans doing? It's just so bad. My favorite account is I Hate Virginia Daily that posts one of your clips hating on North Virginia defense contractor every day, and it's amazing. What is it?
I hate all the Langley heads. I hate all the Norfolk defense contractor pieces of shit. I hate Virginia. I hate Northern Virginia specifically. I hate all the Langley heads. I hate all the Norfolk defense contractor.
What the? This account just only posts this every day.